Thank you, Sharon, and thank you to all of you for sticking around. I am from Chicago, and so whenever I come out west, I am awestruck by the tremendous natural resources that are right at your doorstep. So obviously this weekend I had to take advantage of that. I went skiing, and you can see me here. Yes, hard at work on my form. It was a really rough day on the slopes. And actually, I should confess that this was not a picture from this weekend. It was actually from 10 years ago, which was also the last time I went skiing before this weekend. So how'd I do? Mixed success. But, we're always learning, and I learned a few key lessons this weekend. Number one, skiing is not like riding a bike. Not at all. Second, whoever said it's the journey and not the destination probably didn't walk 500 yards across the remote shuttle lot in rented ski boots. The other important thing I learned is that a black diamond slope at, say, Keystone, Colorado, is a remarkably different experience than a black diamond in Baraboo, Wisconsin. It's all relative. So, enough about my weekend. I'm just glad I'm not up here in crutches. I want to take you back to a wonderful time called the mid-1990s. Some of you may not have been working back then, and some may need a reminder. But it was a time when the markets were up, unemployment was down, according to this crude graph I drew, and the internet was barely a gleam in our eye, as evidenced by this actual business card of mine that I found from circa 1996. That is my email address, so large and cumbersome it cannot be contained on a single line. It's a wonder we got anything done. Hi, I'm Rob Biesenbach. Could you send that document to Rob_Biesenbach % OAR@notes.worldcom.com. If only we had a couple more .coms in that address, it would really be great. But I was working at Ogilvy at that time, and this is a little episode I like to call A Tale of Two Presentations. Now, the first of these presentations was an outright disaster, but the second was a qualified success. And yet, these two presentations were essentially one and the same. How can that be, you may be asking? Don't worry, rhetorical question, I'll tell you. I was working with one of our biggest clients. It was a major Midwestern manufacturing firm. And like so many major Midwestern manufacturing firms of that era, it was going through hard times. It was being undercut by more nimble, lower-cost competitors. Its stock price was in the toilet, and the relationships between management and their largely unionized workforce were acrimonious at best. And into this situation stepped a brand new CEO. He'd been with the company for years, but new to the CEO's office. And he pledged to turn the company around. And as his PR team, it was our responsibility to engage employees and make the case for change. And being good PR people, we implemented a number of tactics across multiple channels. And one of them was what is commonly known today as the town hall meeting. Now, I'm not saying that we invented the town hall meeting. I'm just going to suggest it and move on before you have to think about that. So there we were at the kickoff of this campaign down in Indiana at this plant that made engines in a drab, windowless room, much like this one. And he was talking to 25 or 30 UAW members. And kind of a tough crowd, but really we had no idea. Because he got about 10 minutes into his remarks, and he was interrupted with kind of a tough question, which he answered, and he moved on with his presentation. He was interrupted again, and this time the question was a little more aggressive. And he answered it, and he moved on. And then he got another question and another. And each question got a little more hostile. And the tension in the room started to increase. And it became less of a presentation than a confrontation. And it reached its peak when this very large, very angry man, artist depiction, rose up out of his chair, red in the face, and started yelling, literally yelling at the CEO. He said, "You're stupid, you're incompetent, you don't know what the hell you're doing, you're driving this company into the ground. I don't believe you, I don't trust a word you're saying." And he walked out of the room. And, you know, the staff, we're all in the back of the room. Like, ugh. There goes our case study. But the CEO, to his vast credit, forged ahead, got through the rest of the presentation, got the people out of the room, and then it was time to kind of face the music because he was not a happy guy at that point, and he wanted to know what we were going to do because in 20 minutes, we had another group coming through to hear the exact same presentation, and he was looking for a different result. So we stood around, kind of shell-shocked. I didn't know employees could yell at their CEO. That was new to me. That was my introduction to organized labor, a great equalizer. These guys feared nothing. So as I thought about it, I realized that the answer was right under our noses, literally. This plant made engines, and right at the front of the room was this great big engine that these guys spent all day making. And I said to the CEO, in essence, this was 15 years ago, before you begin the next presentation, take a moment and talk about that engine. What does it mean to you? You've been with this company all of your career. You worked in this plant. You helped design this engine as an engineer. What does the brand mean to you? Why are you here today? What are you fighting for? And so the next group came in, and as I settled down, he paused a moment, and he walked over to the engine. He might have put his hand on it, and he started talking, just off the cuff and authentically, about his early days in the plant and the challenges they faced. And he got into the technical specifications of the engines, which these guys ate up because they spend all day making the thing. And he talked about the company and his love for the brand and his hopes for its future. And the atmosphere in the room turned around 180 degrees. It was an amazing thing. I mean, they weren't like clapping him on the back and inviting him to the Union Hall for beers, but they listened. They still asked tough questions, but they were respectful. And nobody got up and walked out of the room, which by then was one of our metrics for success. So it was a huge relief. And I didn't realize it at the time, but what the CEO was doing that day was acting. He was putting on a performance, and not in a fake, phony way that we may think of when we think about acting. He was embodying the very best characteristics of the very best performers. He connected with his audience on their level. They may have disliked management and distrusted him, but they loved those engines, and they loved the fact that he loved them too. He opened up and showed a personal side that they never expected to see. He told a story, the basis of entertainment and communications. He talked about his challenges in his early days in the plant. And he used emotion and tapped into the mutual pride and love they felt for that great brand. He used the engine as a prop, essentially, to express himself visually and to create a visceral impression in their minds of what it is exactly that drew them together. And finally, as in any great drama, he raised the stakes. This was a company that was founded at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, and he was going to be damned if it was going to go down on his watch. And like I said, I didn't really put the pieces together at the time, but it occurred to me that there's a whole new way of looking at communications. I think part of the problem, some of the dull, bland, uninspired communications we sometimes see is that too often we're looking at other people like ourselves for ideas. Especially, I know when I was in the PR firm, we would look at our competitors, we'd look at our clients' competitors, we'd go over their, well, we didn't have websites back then, but we'd go through their award applications, look at the ideas we liked, and maybe take them. And the trouble is, when everybody is looking at everybody's just like themselves, there's no way to stand out because you're too busy trying to fit in. And I submit, instead of looking at other businesses, we should look at show business for inspiration. After all, where are the most inspiring and entertaining stories in our culture coming from? They're coming from television and movies and live theater. We spend $10 billion a year going to the movies. We spend 35 hours a week watching TV on average, if you can believe that. It's like a full-time job. And in this economy, it's a lot of people's full-time job. I don't have a similar statistic for theater, so I just wrote Cats. A lovely show that you may have seen. I have not, but theater draws its own legions of passionate fans. Now, who can tell me who this guy is? Jerry Brown. Very nice. We're also giving away valuable prizes at this presentation. So we have a free book for this woman here who recognizes Jerry Brown from the 70s. Here's Jerry today. Time. Jerry Brown has the rare distinction of having twice followed actors into office. If you recognize this guy, Ronald Reagan in the 70s, and later Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he was asked about this, and he said, a lot of this is theater. How do you communicate to 38 million people? It's gesture, symbol, the narrative, the drama. Who's the protagonist? Who's the antagonist? So I'm not the first one to come up with this concept linking acting and performance to business communications. But most people, when they talk about it, it's talking about how you can be a better presenter and give better speeches, and that's part of it. But I think it's much more broad. I believe that you should treat every communication like a performance. Every speech and presentation, yes, but also every email, every voicemail, every meeting, job interview, networking event, blog post, Facebook post, whatever it is, if you treat it like a performance, and if you apply the time-tested techniques that actors use to make the most of that performance, you're going to be more successful.